You know what really stood out to me was when you talked about uh, you were on the campus of Winston-Salem and you wanted to learn from the white guy at the other university, and they wouldn't allow that segregation kind of jumped in, and it can be so hurtful. You know, when you get rejected, when you first experience racism. I don't know if y'all went through this, but I still remember the first time I really became aware of it in terms of just being treated different, and I couldn't understand how somebody could know how to hate me when they didn't even know me. You know, and I think that sometimes that pain can cause it can reshape our whole trajectory. You know,
Yes, sir.
you go through life and you live a certain way, and then a
Right.
couple bad things happen, and then it's almost like being called to battle. You know, I know that's what happened to me. You know, when I was working, you know, studying to get my PhD and all that stuff, and just dealing with the racism, the stuff that just drives you crazy, makes you want to go into office and jump across the desk and start choking people. You know, at least that's how I used to feel. And so you start to hear other messages like the minister. And I remember when I saw the Million Man March, and then I saw other scholars that I admired, Cornel West and Dyson and things like that. And it made me say, okay, maybe there's a different way. Maybe being who I am is not a crime anymore. And it's almost like it really felt like being called into a war that I had to fight. And I'm happy fighting that war. I'm happy bringing my talents. For you, you know, you brought your musical and oratorical and analytical ability to the battle. I brought what I had to the battle. And it's almost like you see that happening so often. You know, and people aren't called to the battle. They end up just sort of being lost in the chaos. You know, either feeling like you either have to conform or you have to spend your life frustrated. And it really does kill you. I mean, it really affects your health, your mental health, physical health, all of that. And so I think that's why right now, I think the minister is the leader for young people at this time. We've had this sort of eruption from young people, where almost like a revolution, where it wasn't just against white supremacy, it was against ineffective black leadership. They kind of weeded out some of the leadership that was fake and false, and they are focusing on those that have true authenticity.
In GLC's words, it's the fellowship. So when you look at a lot of other so-called leaders, they get tired of repeating the same message generation after generation. But what the minister has done is fellowship with every generation.
Indeed.
You know what I'm saying?
The thing is like whenever we hear you speak, man, no matter what you're talking about, it just sounds so cool. Like, it just sounds really cool. Like you be speaking liberation, and it just make me just want to be like young Nat Turner out here listening to you talk, man.
Yeah.
Like even when you was just talking at the table, talking about you was hungry, you just was sounding really cool saying it. Yeah, it made me hungry. Like, oh, yeah, I'm hungry too. Yeah.
I think there's several things happening when you start talking about leadership, Minister Farrakhan, or leaders that are effective. How they appeal to the younger people is through a peace. It's a peaceful nature that they're going to come toward you. They'll hear you. They'll open up their heart and their ears and begin to listen. They're filtering everything because they have so much calamity that they're dealing with.
Indeed.
So when they feel that peace is in the room, they automatically quiet down and they open their hearts and their minds, only for a moment sometimes.
Indeed.
But if you can capture them, they know love when it's present.
Indeed.
That's right. When you put your music down and you began to just teach, and my question is, musically minded, is there a direct correlation in which you put together a lecture and are able to express a particular theme or thought in your lecture?
Yes. This would still go back to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because when he made me his radio minister, he wrote me a letter and gave me 4 topics. And I was to make a broadcast on each of these topics. After the 4th topic, he was impressed. I think it was 6. And then he said, you can go on for 6 years. Then for 3 years, it took me a week to develop one broadcast. And the broadcast was 28 minutes and 30 seconds with a minute and a half for some announcement or whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, I would study words and I would go over the word and say, if I can say another word that says these 6 words in one, then I would work to choose the best word. And Elijah Muhammad one day, he knew that I was writing all my speeches out and then practicing them and then going in a little studio in my garage and speaking and then sending it off. So one day he said, "Oh, brother, you don't have to do that. Just get an idea of what you want to say, stand up and let God speak through you." And I tried it. Everything that he taught me that I wasn't sure of, I would try it. And I found that the same power that is in music is in the Word. That the Word of God represents God's will, His judgment on all the things that He writes and speaks about through the mouth of His prophets. When I used to sing, I loved Billy Eckstine. He was the boss as far as baritone quality voice was. And I was singing in a nightclub, and a man, he was a little drunk, but he asked me to come to his table. And so I sat down with him. He said, "What will you drink?" I said, "Oh, sir, I don't drink, but I'll have a ginger ale." He said, "I'm not spending no money on no ginger ale." So I wasn't gonna let him buy alcohol. So he said, if I wanted to hear Billy Eckstine, I would have gone where Billy was singing. But I came here to hear you sing, and I hear Billy. I said, "Well, how could I sing with my voice? I thought that was mine." He said, "Go study the words and emote on those words like you feel them.
Wow.
And that will be you singing."
Wow.
So I went back home and I tried it. It worked. All of us start with somebody we greatly admire. Then, as you imitate what you greatly admire, at some point,
Right.
you begin to discover yourself.
Yourself. Right.
And then you go from the one you admire to who you are. So when I became a Muslim, Malcolm X was my teacher. And I adored Malcolm. So when I spoke, it was Malcolm again speaking.
Right.
Like it was Billy in my song, it was Malcolm in my speech.
Wow.
And then I grew. And I grew out of Brother Malcolm into Lewis. And naturally, when you become a student of a great master, such as Elijah Muhammad, I loved him so much, I wanted to die that he may live in me. And that is what the disciples had to do in order for Jesus to live in them.
Yes.
So when Sister said it's about love, see, when I was able to give up what I loved
Right.
to experience what I would grow to love more,
Right.
which was the man and the word. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, my love and devotion to him caused Lewis to get smaller and smaller and less, and Elijah became more and more in me. So now, I mean, I don't study like people study. I study the audience that's at this table. And when I study the audience, you give me my subject. Because I feel you more than you would know that I feel you. And that was a gift of mine from a little boy. I lived across the street from a funeral parlor. And at 3 years old, I would sit on my stoop and watch the people come out of the funeral parlor just breaking down in such grief that I would sit, thank you, I would sit on the stoop and start crying. I didn't know the person that died. I didn't know the people who came to honor that life that had passed, but I felt their pain and I cried for and with them. And that is really the story of my success musically. Because in order to sing somebody's song, you got to get into that man who wrote the song so that you could feel what he felt when he penned that song. See, and that's how you make a song live.
Yes, right.
And every word is an atom. Every word is an atom. And what you bring to that word cracks the atom and releases the energy of that word.
My Lord. Wow.
So no faker can fake being one with the word of God.
Right.
You will never get the result just imitating.
Right.
You get the result being.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And that is why I think Elijah Muhammad put me back on my violin. Because the violin is the hardest instrument in the world to play, because the distance between a whole note and a half note is so small that any time you put your finger down, if it's not exact, you're out of tune. And you can vibrate your finger and throw the pitch out. So the finger must be down on the string.
Right.
And it's like at a 90-degree angle coming down, and you vibrate without ever interfering with the tone, the intonation, they call it. So it is, you know, with deviation from God. When we deviate from the word by not living it, not striving to live that word, you can't preach the word that you are not living effectively.
Right.
That's what makes Jesus such a master teacher, because he was the word. And he put that word in his disciples and disciplined them to live according to that word. Then the spirit of that word would be the power that goes out to transform human life. And so, yes, there's a direct